It is a great honor and a privilege to introduce Evelyn Klaff. Your maiden name was Sachs, and Evelyn, you were in your beautiful home in Netanya, but you originally from Cape Town in South Africa.
That's correct.
And you come from a very, very fascinating and interesting family that has its roots in Germany.
That's right.
So if you could tell us a little bit about your family, your history.
I'll do that. What I want to do is divide my talk into 4 sections. First, I'm going to talk about my great-grandparents. The second part, I'm going to talk about how my grandparents were saved from Germany. The third part, I'm going to talk about how they were miraculously allowed to disembark in South Africa. And the fourth part, I'm going to tell you how my Opa started his business. Is that okay?
It's wonderful.
Anyway, I was the first grandchild, and being a girl, I wasn't allowed to go out to pajama parties, to sleepovers. My mother, being German, was very strict with me. My Opa, he ruled the family with an iron fist. In fact, I remember my mother telling me that when they went out on a date, they used to hide the lipstick and the high heel shoes in a bush in the garden outside. That's how strict he was. So we lived on one corner of the main road called Albany Road, and my Oma and Opa, they lived on the other corner called Conifer Road. And while I was preparing this, it suddenly occurred to me that most times that I did a sleepover at my Oma, I was actually there when Opa was traveling. And we had a lovely time. She used to play games with me. I remember her showing me how she actually made noodles with a special machine that she used to twirl around. But of course, while I was there, a lot of stories came out. And one of the stories that came out was about her father, my groosopa. Now, he was taken away by the Nazis to a concentration camp. And Oma was born in Bad Birkenau. So I'm not sure if the concentration camp was Birkenau or Buchenwald. I've tried to find out from the family, they're not sure. But Buchenwald was 2 hours away from where they lived. Why do I say this? Because one day, at roll call, the Nazi in charge, I don't know what he was called. I don't know if he did this for fun, why he suddenly did this, but he stripped my groosopa Abraham. I won't say naked, because he stripped him to his gutkers. They wore these long johns or whatever. And it was the middle of winter. And the snow wasn't even knee deep, it was waist deep. And he said, "You can go." And they were sure he would die on the way and be frozen to death. And Oma remembers she saw a figure coming, and as he came nearer, she saw the beard with icicles. And she remembers how long it took to cure him of the frostbite on his feet. But he was alive. Now, the other thing I want to tell you about my great-grandparents is they were on the St. Louis. Hitler decided, as a propaganda campaign with Himmler, to put a whole lot of Jews on a luxury liner called the St. Louis, to show the world how good he was to the Jews. They took lots of photos, and the luxury liner went off to Havana. Now, a lot of these Jews had relatives in Havana. The St. Louis docked in Havana, and they waved to their relatives that were standing at the docks, and the ship anchored there for 3 whole days. And they weren't allowed to disembark. And eventually, the St. Louis had to sail onwards. And the relatives on the dock were absolutely distraught, and obviously the people on board ship were even more distraught. And so the ship went onward to America. And America wouldn't let the Jews go to disembark. And then the ship went to Canada. And Canada didn't want the Jews either. Well, Hitler was delighted. And he said, you see, nobody wants the Jews. And the St. Louis had no recourse but to go back to Hamburg. Well, that ship got lighter and lighter every day because people were just jumping overboard and committing suicide because the thought of going back to Germany was too terrible to contemplate. Eventually, 5 countries decided to give a quota of 200, to allow 200 Jews to come to their country. One was England, one was Holland, one was Belgium, one was France, and the 5th one I've forgotten, I think it was Sweden. But
I think there were only 4. There were only 4 countries.
There were only 4? That's better, because I know Sweden allowed some Jews on a boat, or some Jews escaped on a boat. England was the only one where the Nazis didn't overrun them. All the others, the Nazis conquered, and all those Jews were taken to concentration camps. But luckily, my great-grandparents were chosen to go to England.
Evelyn, can I just mention something?
Yes?
The captain of the boat was very sensitive in a way because the boat actually didn't go back to Hamburg. It went to Belgium, to Antwerp.
Is that so?
Yeah, actually,
I didn't know that.
So he had some compassion for, and it actually didn't return to Hamburg, but it went to Belgium.
It's wonderful. I didn't know. I read this book when I was a teenager, and I'm so upset. I looked for the book, and I'm so upset that when we made Aliyah, I gave it away. Now, how do I know that my great-grandparents were on the St. Louis? Because unfortunately, my Oma died quite a long time ago, Zichrono Livracha. When I was a teenager, of course, I often used to visit my Oma. When she was a widow at that stage, she was living with my Aunt Eleanor and Uncle Eddie. Just by the by, I must tell you that my mother, and this is a picture of my mother, she was one of 3 sisters. And she escaped Germany, I'll tell you later, when she was 7 years old, and her sister Eleanor, who was 4 years younger than her, also escaped at that time. And my Aunt Doreen, who now lives in Eilat, and she's 86. She was 9 years younger than my mother, and she was born in South Africa in 1938. So when my Oma was a widow, she lived with my Aunt Eleanor in Sea Point. And after her stroke, she only spoke German. And before that, her English was actually very good. So I used to visit my Oma very often. I used to play rummy with her, and I used to keep her company because my Aunt Eleanor often used to be out teaching. So I came with this book, and at the back of the book was this photograph. As I told you, Hitler did this propaganda, and there were lots of photographs. And I was looking at this photograph, and suddenly my Oma shrieked, and she said, and she pointed to two people, and she said, "Das Mama und Papa." And that's how I know that they were on the St. Louis. Anyway, that's the section about my great-grandparents. And so they were there in England for a year. And now this part I've learned from my mother, who I must admit she was prone a little bit to exaggerate. And they stayed there for a year, and after a year they got 2 tickets for a transatlantic liner to go to America from Uncle Ludwig. Uncle Ludwig, he had a jewelry store in America. He was quite wealthy, and he sent them the tickets, and my great-grandfather worked in this jewelry store until the day he died. And after that, my great-grandmother, Matilda, moved to Cape Town, and she stayed with my Oma and Opa until she died. And I remember very clearly my great-grandmother Matilda. I remember seeing her. She was quite regal, she had black hair, and she kept her hair in a bun. I couldn't find any pictures. My Aunt Doreen said she was going to try and find one, but she hasn't managed yet. Because when she made Aliyah, her son put all the pictures on the cell phone. Anyway, so that's the story of my great-grandparents. Now the second section, the story about how my grandparents were saved in Germany. My Opa and his brother, my Opa was called Hermann Kupfer, his brother was Sigmund Kupfer. They lived in Schmelnau. My brother will tell you all about that, because that's where they visited, and the vice mayor took them all there. My Oma was born in Bad Birkenau, and when she got married, that's where they moved to. It was amazing that two sisters, my Aunt Anna and my Oma Bertha, married 2 brothers. Anyway, they lived in Bad Birkenau, and my Opa and his brother had a store that sold material. My Opa lived above the store, and his brother lived behind the store. And why this is important is because they put Stolpersteine in front of the store, I think. I'm not quite sure where they put the Stolpersteine, but they put it somewhere where my brother visited. Anyway, my brother, when he visited last year, he never understood why my Opa and his brother were the only 2 Jews that were saved in the whole of the town of Bad Birkenau. Until he found this advert. and the advert was in German. And I'm sure he'll show you a copy. And what this advert said, it advertised material for the nuns. And obviously, my Opa and his brother had a very good relationship with the nuns. Well, one night, middle of the night, there was a knock on my Opa's door. And there stood Mother Superior. And she said to my Opa, "You've got to come quickly. You and your brother. We'll hide you. The SS are going to round up all the Jews in this town." And this Mother Superior, the nuns, they hid the two brothers in the catacombs. Opa was in the catacombs for 6 weeks. Uncle Zygmunt, I know, had papers before, and he left before. And apparently he went eventually to South Africa, and he landed up in a little dorpie, that's a little town, called Van Wyksvlei. I've heard about this Van Wyksvlei so often because my mother and her sisters were often sent there for a holiday. Anyway, Opa had to wait for forged passports and papers and for tickets for a ship liner to go to South Africa. Eventually, after 6 weeks, they managed. So it was my Opa, my Oma, my mother, and my Aunt Ella. Her name was Eleanor, but we called her Ella. And my mother's name was Ingeborg, which she hated, and she always said her name was Ingrid, but we called her Inga. Anyway, I don't know if Ingeborg, it sounded Swedish to me, not even German. Anyway, they got on the ship and they landed in Cape Town. Now, South Africa, Cape Town, wasn't easy either because South Africa was full of Nazis also. They were called grey shirts. And there was a law, no Jews to disembark in Cape Town. So Uncle Zygmunt was there at the docks to go and get his brother and family to come to Van Wyksvlei. And just by the way, this is just aside, when eventually they got to Cape Town, which they did, Opa refused to go to Van Wyksvlei because there was no shore, there was no kosher meat, and so he decided to stay in Cape Town. And Uncle Zygmunt was very upset with him. That's just in brackets. Anyway, so Uncle Zygmunt was there, and there stood the admiral or commandant to make sure that no Jews landed. And Uncle Zygmunt, who had a trading store in Van Wyksvlei, by which time he knew the Afrikaans very well, being German, the Afrikaans went very easily to him. And now my Aunt Eleanor, Auntie Ella often used to tell me the story. That's how I know it. And we often used to tell her to write it down. Unfortunately, near the end of her life, she got Alzheimer's. She was a brilliant woman. She was a teacher. She used to lecture. And the last 2 years of her life, she was in a home, and she died just, I think, 2.5 years ago. So I remember it clearly because she often used to say it like this. Anyway, so the commandant said to Uncle Zygmunt, "Wat maak jy hier?" Which means, what are you doing here? So Uncle Zygmunt, in his best Afrikaans, he rolled all the R's. He said, Ach man, ek kom om my broer te kom haal, which roughly means, oh man, I'm coming to fetch my brother. And miracle of miracles, the commandant said, dan vat hom, which means, okay, take him. And that's how my Opa, Oma, my mother and Auntie Ella landed in Cape Town, where they stayed, as I've explained. And that's what I wanted to tell you.
It's incredible. Incredible.
I think it's miraculous.
It really is.
But as I said, they didn't go to Van Wyck's flat. They stayed in Cape Town. Now, Opa, they came with almost nothing. But in his suitcase, he managed to bring one bit of material, which he found some nuns who spoke German. And he sold that piece of material to the nuns, and with the profit he bought another piece of material, and with that he got 2 pieces of material. Anyway, so he used to visit this department store quite often. Now, the department store, now this is how he started his business. The department store in those days, they had those lifts with the grill that you had to open and close manually. So you had to have a lift man sitting there who opened and closed the lifts. And each floor, the lift man used to announce what the goods that were on the floor. Men's shoes, haberdashery, etc., etc. Well, one day, when Opa was in the lift with this man, the lift man said to Opa, would you like a car? And Opa said, what do you mean? And the lift man said, I actually won a lottery and I won an automobile. And I've got only one leg. So what am I going to do with a car? I want you to have it. And Opa said, but why me? And the liftman said to Opa, you are the only person that speaks to me. So I want you to have this car. And I saw the car. It was magnificent. And that's how Opa started his business. And he used to travel all around South Africa selling the materials. And in the end, he had a driver, and the driver almost became one of the family. And when the driver died, we were responsible for getting his children to university. And that's what I wanted to tell you. Now here is a picture of Opa, Herma, and Oma Bertha. This is my mother's wedding. And this is my Aunt Ella. Although there were 4 years between them, they actually looked like twins when they were younger. This is my Auntie Dory. She was what they call a laat-lammetjie. She was a surprise, and she was born in 1938. They arrived on the second last ship into Cape Town in 1937. This lady here is Opa's sister, Jenny. We used to call her Auntie Jenny. And she was eventually, this is her daughter Gladys, and they moved to Israel in 1950, I think, 1949. And my mother also lived in Israel for 18 years. I used to go visit her like twice a year. And whenever I arrived, I just used to put foot in Israel. My mother used to say, "Have you found Gladys?" Because that was her cousin. And I must say, I loved Gladys. Gladys was very good to me. When I was sick, she came to visit me. When I made Aliyah, she came to visit us. I was very fond of Gladys. She was very down to earth. She was married to an architect. I'm just trying to see who else is here that I can... Of course, this is my father. He came from Russia. He came at 2 years old. They came from Riga. They were, his parents were from Moscow originally, but when they were turfed out of the university in Moscow, they moved to Riga. And yeah. Oh, and this is Auntie Anna, and this is Zygmunt. This is his brother, and this is Oma's sister, Auntie Anna. And there's a very interesting story also. Opa was one of 11 children. Opa's father was married, and the wife died, leaving 5 children. And then Opa's father remarried and had 6 children. And Opa was one of the 6 children. And this, as I said, Auntie Jenny, I'm not sure, was part of the 6 children. And as I said, Anna was Oma's sister, and Sigmund was Opa's brother. And they were the 2 that were saved. Now, Albert was also one of the brothers, and he came to Cape Town. He lived in America, and he came to Cape Town after 40 years. There was an article in the newspaper about them, that he hadn't seen his brother for 40 years. And by which time Anna was a widow, and Anna also lived in Conifer Road, but higher up. And what happened? Albert fell in love with Anna. And Opa was terribly religious. And of course, you're not allowed to marry your brother's wife. So there was a hell of a hoo-ha about it. But in the end, they married in court, and Auntie Anna moved to America. So it's quite a story, that. This is a more modern picture of my mother and Auntie Ella. This is my mother, and this is Auntie Ella. With them is my brother's wife and their children, the one son and the one daughter. You'll see a picture of the daughter when she's much younger. This is a picture of one daughter at her bat mitzvah. Why have I chosen this picture? Because here's Auntie Ella, here's Auntie Doreen, this is Uncle Eddie, Auntie Ella's husband, and this is Sandy, Doreen's daughter, which appears in that article that I showed you. And these are Auntie Ella's grandsons, which I'll also show you later. The one lives in Israel, his name is changed to Bezalel, and the other one lives in Portugal, Lisbon. Now that same girl of the bar mitzvah, this is her wedding. And why have I chosen this picture? Because these 2 boys on the end have grown up a little bit. And here's Auntie Doreen and here's Auntie Ella. And where's my mother? And this is Auntie Ella's daughter, Uncle Eddie. And this is my brother Tony. But I'll show you bigger photos. This is that girl that was in the violet dress as she was younger. That's Tony's daughter, which you're going to interview soon. And this is our other daughter, Jeanette. Of course, that's my husband, Mike. Here's my mother. She once got very thin, and after that she had double pneumonia. And here she's a lot bigger. My children are very embarrassed about this photograph because they are both very frum now. The one is married to a Swadi, so she's Swadi, and the other one is Mizrahi. And they are very embarrassed because it's not snus. Anyway, this is our wedding, my father and my mother. And here is a nice picture of my brother. And here's one of mother and daughter at that wedding.
It's lovely, it's really lovely.
And this is my brother when he was young. He was very naughty. He got into a car once. He let go the brake and it went into a wall. This is a picture of Auntie Yenny and Gladys when we used to visit there. And of course, these are our girls when they were little. Now, why have I chosen this picture is because Opa had a lot of antiques. He couldn't take out money, but he took out antiques. And the house was full of antiques. And in fact, just now you can take a picture of that one, which is hand painted. I think it's 1900. And all the walls had paintings, even in the toilets. And this one is in Auntie Ella's house. And here's a picture. I'm not sure if it is Gross Oma or if it is my Oma when she was young.
And where is that painting? Does it still exist?
I think my cousin Pauline has it. That's Ella's daughter. This is a picture of our daughter Jeanette making Aliyah. She was 17. She just finished matric, Bagrut. And this is a picture of my brother. He had a shop, a mini market in the Rova. And all the South Africans used to mill around there to go and visit him. So that's the shop behind him. Now this is a picture of my mother when she graduated. She was a beautiful woman, even when she was 85. And whenever she went into a room, I mean, she had an aura about her. People used to turn around.
Well, what did she study?
She studied librarianship. And just before she died, she used to read 5 books at a time. Why? Because one was too boring.
And where did she get her degree?
In Cape Town, UCT. And this is a picture of her as a married woman. And this is a picture at, I'm not sure whose bris it was. I don't think it was Abichai. but she just had pneumonia, so she wasn't quite in the best frame. And this is her at our granddaughter's bat mitzvah. This is her with my brother, my father and his children. There were twin sons and a daughter. And this is my brother and myself at the younger granddaughter's bat mitzvah, the third youngest. And this is my Auntie Doreen. This is the picture that I took that's been blown up that I showed you, that I did the painting that you see up there after she died. It was very therapeutical for me to do that painting.
I'm just going to show the painting. It's a beautiful painting.
But do it from a bit far away, because it's meant to be seen from a bit further away. And you can also take a picture of the antique. It's hand painted. Because that came from Auckland.
And this was in their home in Germany?
Beg your pardon?
This was in their home in Germany?
Yes. I don't know if it was in their home, but he brought antiques. My art teacher was here once and she went crazy.
It's amazing to see in colour that they did the painting in colour.
Yeah, well, it was 1900. This is more modern. I remember after Opa died, we had to get rid of a lot of antiques, and I walked past the shop and I saw one that I recognized. And I walked into the shop and I said, I think my grandfather had this. And they said, no, it's we only have one of a kind. And the next day I went and it was out of the window.
And Evelyn, you got a large picture, a very special...
What picture?
A very large picture.
Oh yes, I can show you. When my mother died, she had 14 great-grandchildren. So, if Hitler wanted to get rid of us, he was foiled.
This is real nachas, real...
That was the wedding of one of my brother's twin sons. I didn't make that one. I made the first twin brother. He was married on the 31st of December.
So Evelyn, if I can ask you,
Sure.
What message do you give, do you impart to your children and to the future generations? And what message did your mom give? And your dad?
My mother was the most fantastic woman. She was kind and generous. She would give the clothes off her back. She used to pick up people off the street. Well, my Oma also, she used to, according to my Aunt Doreen, she used to bake rolls and challah for people, and she used to make biscuits for everyone. But my mother, she was generous to a fault. And if I can emulate my mother even a tiny bit, then I've done a wonderful job. because my mother was really, really an angel. She was a fantastic woman. It's now 10 years since she's gone, and she's left a void in all of us. The grandchildren, we go every year to the grave and we always talk about her. And she always cared about everybody. She used to buy for the grandchildren clothes. She used to have the great-grandchildren over for meals, and she used to make meals for everybody what they liked, like a hotel. I had to look after my one daughter's grandchildren when they went to Barcelona, and they didn't like this and they didn't like that. And when my son-in-law took me to the station, I said to him, you know, I'm not running a hotel, and he was shocked. Anyway, and next time I knew better. I said, I made a list. Now, what do you like? What don't you like? And the next time I had to look after them, there was no problem. Yeah, no, my mother was a very special woman. I remember a lot of people that she looked after. There was a photographer. She used to make lentil soup for him. There was a young boy that she met in the library. She used to work in the library of the university, and she brought him home. And oh, there were so many misfits that she looked after. It was amazing. And even when she was dying, we didn't know how long it would take, and she had a living will. She didn't want anything to be done to her, and we didn't know what would happen, and it was the war, and we didn't know if I would get another plane. And my mother said, go home. And I didn't want to go. Mike had already been gone 2 weeks. I needed to get back to him, and she said, go and be with my sisters. And I think she didn't want me to see her dying. And my cousin Mayor was distraught. He said, but she can go and die. Alice, she can do this. And my brother said, no, she doesn't want. And she had a bad heart, and she used to smoke a lot in her younger days. And I don't think she wanted me, she didn't want me to see her dying. She thought my brother could handle it, not me, and she said, go and be with my sisters. And it was the war. I think the plane I took was the last plane that was allowed to go out. And so very reluctantly I went. And so even when she was dying, she was thinking of other people. And it's just as well I went, because I sat shiver with my Auntie Ella, and we were alone. So that was my mother.
And Evelyn, can I ask, your mum, did she speak German, or did you?
Well, she spoke German to her mother. I remember being at a party, and there was Alice Ackerman there. And my mother turned around and refused to talk to her. Alice Ackerman had a raincoat factory, I remember. And my in-laws of my late husband were German. And I said, Ma, what's the matter with you? And she said to me, she's German. I said, Ma, so are you. She's Jewish. I won't talk to her. Anyway, in the end, they became very good friends. But that's where I got this hatred for Germany and anything to do with German. And as I said, Tony went on this trip, and he took videos, And quite a long time ago, I mean, he still suffers very badly from allergies, especially when there's pollen in the air and everything. So one time he spent 6 months in Berlin, and he went to he spent time in a shul, and he did the laning, and he did everything. I think it was in Fulda, and my mother also went there to visit, and she saw the shop in Bad Birkenau and everything, and in his spare time, he had a lot of spare time. With a computer, he learned German. Anyway, last year when they went on this trip, obviously they were together with this vice mayor and all the rest of it, and they were talking, and I heard Tony say, "Ach so!" And I tell you something, I just cringed. I can understand when it's the dialect of my Oma. I used to, as I said, after she had a stroke, I had to speak to her. My mother spoke German to my Oma, but that was it.
And Yiddish, did they ever speak Yiddish?
No. No.
And at home, did you ever have German goods? Or did you drive a German car?
No. I don't know about German goods, but we never had a German car.
And how do you feel about Germany today, being one of the most pro-Israel countries in Europe?
No, I feel differently, but in 1976 I traveled through Europe, and when I was in Germany I felt very uncomfortable, and I kept on thinking, where were you in the war? I just had that feeling, that eerie feeling. I didn't feel comfortable. And now, October, Mayor said to me, "Why don't you come? First of all, I didn't want to come because they're not so strict about kashrut, and I would have been a bind. But I'm not happy about going to Germany so much. I don't need to see my roots. I've seen it on video. I much rather go to Prague or something like that. Germany doesn't send me. Just hearing the brogue. My mother's inculcated in me this hatred. And I must tell you something, that in the end of her life, my mother had some medication, I think to prevent dementia or something, I don't know. But it used to give her nightmares. And all the nightmares, I mean, she was 7 years old when she left, and she was chased by Hitler Youth, and she hid in the foundations of a building, and they had fractured her wrist, and that wrist obviously was never healed, so her wrist was a little bit crooked, and she was in a home in Jerusalem, and all those memories came back in the nightmares, she used to tell me. So, you know, we all have scars, and it never leaves you. So, I don't think, even though Germany is our friend now and everything, and when they put all these Stoppelsteinem and everything, I think, yeah, they're just trying to get rid of their guilt, you know. And they're being nice to us. Let them be nice. It's not for me.
Well, Evelyn, I want to thank you very, very much Well, it's the most amazing thing is when you look at the picture and you see the family that your mom, that she established, and that is the real, it's a comfort and it's a revenge.
Absolutely, absolutely.
That is,
and now I've got an even bigger one.
so if I can just thank you so much. So Evelyn, really, I'm so grateful to you, and it's been such an honor and a privilege to be in your home and to hear the story. It really is something amazing that they survived so many things, and to be on the St. Louis, your family, and to have got out of Germany, because at the end, only 20,000 Jews from the whole of Germany survived at the end of the war.
Is that a fact?
And at once there were 600,000 Jews in Germany.
Wow.
So it's miraculous.
And now so many Jews are going back to Germany.
The only thing with Germany today, when you hear and you see how Europe has become so anti-Israel, to have Germany and Austria as well, that they standing up and supporting. So it's also it's something positive.
That's true.
But the history is very hard. It's very, very hard. And the scars are very deep. Anyway, I'm so grateful to you.
Well, I'm
Thank
grateful
you so
to
much.
you too, because
It's been really very special.
at least it's a memory. It's been recorded.
Well, thank you very much. And then you just have Ani Mazel and Bracha.
Thank you. I do. I'm very blessed from
And
my
it's wonderful
children
that
and my
you're here in
grandchildren.
Israel, and this is where the future is.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Evelyn.
Thank you.